Hey, so today I'm going to be showing you guys how to start painting models. Basically, the first thing you need is your paints, and making sure you have the right types of paints and colors that you want is very important. Showing you here that base layer of paint that I've put on over the primer, which in this case is blue. This model's been left apart and for easier access to all the bits and pieces for detail work, which makes it a lot easier. So basically, here you can see I am adding in the base coats for the smaller details. So right here I'm adding black into the joints and to cover up some pouches and things. And you can see there that I am wiping the brush on the paper napkin or paper towel to help shape the brush into a point, so it's easier to be controlled. Now I'm going in with brown to pick out the belt and other little pouches and various details over the model, which on this one is mainly around its waist. One thing to keep in mind is that this is just base coats, so you really don't have to worry about spilling over onto other parts of the model, as any mistakes you make here can be easily fixed by just going back to the original color that was there and just coloring over it. So don't worry about overspill or any of that kind of stuff, because down the line it'll get covered up and it'll look fine. I'm making sure to apply paint multiple times over the same area to try to build up a nice even coat on that base layer. Also making sure again to use thinned paints. A common thing that I see happen with new painters, and I even had happen to me myself, was being impatient with each layer of paint not going on as I wanted it to and not having the right opacity. So I'd end up slapping on globs of paint. But in doing that, you end up losing a lot of the little details on a lot of these models that were sculpted to have all these little details being shown. So always make sure you thin your paints. And it's okay to go back and do 1 or 2 or 3 coats of paint. Usually 2 will work, but depending on the paint type or the surface area, you might want to do more than 2 or even more than 3. So always make sure you're thinning them, and it's okay to go back and add more. It's easier to add more than it is to take it away. Whenever you switch paints, always make sure that you're washing your brush off thoroughly in water and then wicking away the extra water with the paper towel or napkin that you're using. Throughout this step, you can see that I wasn't being too careful on how I applied the paint. I was just getting a base layer down and not really worrying about the placement of it on these particular parts, as they were pretty easy to go back and cover up with their original color on these ones. When you're painting a disassembled model, it's helpful to put all the pieces back together after you have base coats on all of them to see what the finished thing will look like, or at least get a rough idea. This one was a push-fit model with the shield arm having been broken off, so it doesn't stay on too well, but you can get the picture. So at this point, I'm going to cut to having the base coats done on that. So as you can see here, I have pretty much finished up all the base coats. There's still a couple little things that are not perfectly in place, but those will be fixed after the highlights. So basically there, you can see that I've kind of covered things back up, made sure the holster is all brown again, the leather fixed up all of the little metal details. So here I have a model finished in the same color scheme, but it's a different model. So as you can see, all of the details on it have been highlighted out, and there is some added extra shading on there. But those highlights, after that highlighting step, it helps to add a definition between the different armor panels and pieces and parts to make sure that things aren't being lost. A way to highlight easier is to use the flat of your brush, as you can see there, to drag along the top. When you're doing that, though, you want to make sure that your paint is not super watery, as to not have it make globs or run over the spot that you're doing. Another way to do it is just painting straight lines on, which I'm going to demonstrate for you. But I'll show you, if you don't thin your paints, it'll come out a lot more globby and not as precise. So if I drag down with my brush, which I'd always recommend you drag down towards yourself, it's a more controlled motion, you can see that the line is kind of thick, whereas I just thinned it with some water, and you can see that applying the same amount of pressure to get a little bit of paint off, and the lines come out a lot thinner and a lot smoother. As you can see, a lot straighter there. So always, especially if you're going in for detailed lines like that, try to thin your paints. And you can tell on this model that I didn't do a perfect job on all of these areas with the highlights, but I'm still practicing myself. When doing highlights, I use white and whatever the base color armor is. I do about a 50-50 mix for most of it, but on the most raised parts of it, I will use just pure white to add a little bit extra pop to it. As you can see on the shoulder pads, that top corner here on the thigh armor, and on the hands, all around it pretty much. You can see there's little specks and parts of white in the joint areas and pretty much anything that is angular or more upwards facing. Another thing to think about is whether you're painting for the tabletop or display. And depending on your needs, you can choose to not do some of these steps. So for some people, painting the back area might not be needed because you're just looking at the front of the model. So only go as far as you need when it comes to actually painting these. In my case, I'm using this as a display and possibly tabletop model, so I decided to go a little bit further. Here's another one side by side of, again, the same color scheme, but a different model and different overall shapes. As you can see, there's different armor panels there on the thighs. With the differing of models like this, it's really up to you as the painter to decide how you want to deal with it. For me, I just treated it as if it was any other piece of armor, which is pretty much what it is. But you could use it as like an added detail. If maybe you want to do squads, you can use that as a spot to mark out, maybe do different colors there. But I'm only doing 3 models in this color scheme as of right now, so I'm going to leave it as is. My final thoughts are, make sure you're not comparing yourself to other pro painters, because a lot of people you'll see online are painting at a pro level. But if you enjoy painting, give it your all, and eventually you will get better and you will see improvements. Enjoy your painting, and I'll see you next time.